Hello everyone, my name's Locke Vincent and welcome back to another episode of Gaming Alchemy. This is your first time joining us. What I do on the show is take a game and break it down, snap it in two, take those two pieces and analyze them in my lab. So, I have a very special game that we're going to break down today, and it is The Cave from Double Fine. Now, the reason The Cave is so special is because it's the first adventure game that Tim Schaffer and Ron Gilbert came together to make since their Monkey Island days. So I'm very excited to talk about it. It's a very unique game, but it is an adventure game, so you are taking items and moving them through an environment to solve puzzles. Item-based puzzles. That's what it's all about. But what you really play the game for is the style and the characters and the story and the adventure. What happens in the cave is you have 7 unlikely adventurers that come together to explore this cave. It's a mystery. It's a weird cave. And as you're exploring this beautiful cave world, you pick 3 adventurers, so you can take, say, the hillbilly, the time traveler, and the monk. All very different, with all their own personalities. And you go through this cave using their different abilities to accomplish, the goal. Each character has their own separate level that you can do, and then there's 3 common levels that you will do with all the characters. Now, it's all about personality. Each character is different. You're going to want to replay this game to hear all the different dialogue, all the different quips between the characters. The writing is just spot on, and that's what you're getting with Double Fine. It's the writing. You play these games for the writing. Whether it may lack in some gameplay, the payoff is in replaying these games to hear what the characters have to say. Now we've got a stunning visual art style, and really it's just it's a treat to break this down. So let's get to the first game and see what I'm going to break the cave down into. Alright, so the first game that I'm going to break the cave down into goes all the way back to my Genesis days, and it is The Lost Vikings. Now, you may not know that The Lost Vikings was made by Blizzard Entertainment, but back then they were known as Silicon and Synapse. So, one of the biggest developers, publishers on the planet, making one of my favorite games, Lost Vikings, relating to the cave. So what do we got? We have 3 Vikings, all with different abilities. We have Eric the Swift, who can run and jump and headbutt. We have Balog the Fierce, who has a bow and arrow and a sword. And finally, Olaf the Stout, which has his shield that can be used to block enemies and has a platform and a hang glider. Very versatile Vikings. Anyways, you use their different abilities and combine them to solve puzzles. What's really cool is that you can switch between the 3 of them at any time. So much like the cave, where you have to switch between your 3 chosen characters, the Lost Vikings did this first and basically set the scene, set the tri-team puzzle solving force. So the cave does it really well because you have 7 different characters. Any combination of those characters can be used together during your playthrough. In The Lost Vikings, it was much easier because you had 3 characters that you stuck with throughout the whole game. Now you're going to see hazards, enemies, obviously some platforming, and between the 3 Vikings you have to figure out how to proceed. Each Viking has their own health bar, so if one dies, you are kind of hooped. Thankfully, you have infinite continues, so it's very forgiving in the sense that you can restart a level. Essentially, it is a puzzle game, and you just have to figure out some cool ways to combine the abilities of your Vikings to make, to proceed. And usually there was one way to solve the level, but sometimes you could get a little creative and sort of force out another way, kind of brute forcing it. I found I did that quite a bit. What was really cool about The Lost Vikings is that you could also have a second player come in, and that made things a lot easier because you could have the second player play as Olaf and have the shield up, and then you could just sit back behind and fire arrows. You didn't have to like toggle between them really quickly to make sure that one didn't get hit. Anyways, it's all about teamwork and ability combination to solve puzzles. The Lost Vikings did this before the Cave, and the Cave implemented it pretty well. Again, you don't see this very often with tons of different characters and having all those combinations and permutations to solve puzzles. Albeit the puzzles in the Cave are a bit simple, but again, it's just neat to be able to solve it in different ways, you know, using the monk's mind meld telekinesis versus, you know, using the adventurer's ropes and that sort of thing. So that's the first game that the Cave breaks down into. The Lost Vikings, a nostalgic classic for me back on the Sega. So let's move on to the second game and find out what the Cave breaks down into in the other half. Let's go over there. Alright, so the second game that I've broken the Cave down into seems like an obvious choice, and it's Maniac Mansion. But I don't have that many opportunities to talk about Maniac Mansion, so I thought I'd, you know, take it where I could. So this comes to us from Lucasfilm Games back in 1985. It came out for everything back then. I played it on the NES. I know the Amiga version was very good. Even the Commodore 64 version was available. Anyways, Ron Gilbert co-wrote it with Gary Winnick. These two masterminds came together to make one of the most pivotal classic adventure titles of all time. So what the really cool feature of Maniac Mansion was is that you could choose from a pool of characters. So you can see where the Cave gets some of its influences there. But you took Dave, who was looking for his girlfriend Sandy Pants, and you picked two other characters of a group of 6. And depending on what characters you took, you would solve the puzzles in different ways because they had different skills. The nerd Bernard could repair things. Sid, who played bass, could play instruments, so on and so forth. So you got these different combinations of heroes, and you were able to solve the game differently every time, which led to 5 different endings. That was really cool back in the day. Now the Cave, you don't get, you know, terribly different endings, but you can see where I'm going with on this. You know, you have the 7 different adventurers. You have their own kind of levels. You can take a look into kind of more of how they develop. But Maniac Mansion was ahead of its time in this sense. You know, you're going against this Dr. Evil Fred Edison in a point-and-click adventure and solving puzzles with character-based abilities. We had never seen that before. It's very different from, say, something like Monkey Island, where it was use item on other thing. And in this, sure, you could use item on thing, but the next time you play, you might get a different reaction depending on what character you use, which is really cool. Of course, I have to mention the writing. Because it's Ron Gilbert, you know, and when you have this big double-blind circle, that's what defines adventure games. That's why you play them. It's for that dialogue. It's for that humor, that story. What's another cool thing that we see in Maniac Mansion is that characters could die. Because you had this pool to choose from, it didn't mean game over if a character died or was put in jail. You got to pick another one. So, if Sid died and you needed 3 at all times, so you went back and you picked up Bernard and he came and then you used him. That was neat to see, because usually in, say, something like the Lost Vikings, if one of your characters died, because you only had 3, you had to start the level over. So that's a little difference there. In the Cave, if one of your characters dies, well, it's pretty hard to die, but if one of them dies, you have to start the level over. But yeah, bringing together puzzles with specific skills, non-linearity, some different endings, writing, one tight package that we can see shining through all the way from 1985, you know, what's that, 20, almost 30 years later for the Cave. So let's wrap the show up, take it back with some final thoughts on the Cave. So that concludes the breakdown for The Cave. Both games, the Lost Vikings and Maniac Mansion, have the three hero sort of swapping between, using different abilities to solve puzzles. Maniac Mansion, we see that writing, that lineage coming through from Ron Gilbert into The Cave. That's the obvious choice there. But I did want to, shed some light onto Lost Vikings because it's one of my favorite games back in the day. Loved it, and I thought I was really smart when I could sort of, beat the game without using a walkthrough when the internet didn't exist as much as it does today. So yeah, The Cave, you can check that out on almost any platform. I played it on PC. It's very good there, and yeah, it's worth your time if you like a good story and a beautiful world. I know a lot of people don't dig adventure games, but this it's snappy, it's short, it's quick, it's easy to finish, and yeah, it's definitely worth your time. So that's the breakdown for this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you want a game broken down, please get a hold of me some way. You can tweet me at GamingAlchemy or at LockVincent. Email me, gamingalchemy@gmail.com or lock@gamingalchemy. Be sure to check out some of the other shows on the site or previous episodes of the show. Love to hear comments and feedback. Let me know what you think. But yeah, go out there, play some games, whether they're old or new. The adventure genre needs your love. I thank you once again for watching, and we'll see you when you tune in next time. Peace.